and culture. Patrick, you've got 14 minutes and I'm going to be strict. Okay, so there's your challenge. Over to you, Patrick. Oh, I haven't put your...
13 and a half minutes now. Let's see how we go. As mentioned, I'm the VP of People and Ops at a company called Metomic. We are an early stage startup. I joined 4 weeks ago. I am fresh, I am green, I am in the middle of an onboarding process that did not happen. And that's my jam, joining companies at that period just before they're likely to go through a significant growth stage where there is absolutely nothing in place from a people and culture angle. I'm also the board member of a company called ImpactEd, which is a different flavor but a similar stream actually, which is a digital platform that helps educational institutions better evaluate their impact they're having with pupils. Now, when we think about people and culture in startups, we are flooded with the idea that a culture exists in a startup made up of table tennis tables and beer fridges, and we're all super cool and friendly because we go down to the pub on a Thursday night and therefore you should join us. Well, my favorite one at the moment is we're really, really flexible for everything that happens in your life, and that's a part of our culture, but we need you in the office 4 days a week. And this feels really weird for me because what probably wasn't mentioned in the intro is that my world, where I come from, is actually very, very different to the land of startups. Where I actually learnt my craft in people and culture was in the Australian coal mining industry. And if I rewind back past all of the tech companies back into the coal mining industry, the idea of culture, actually, Pa, you set it up beautifully with one of your comments just before. The idea of culture was all to do with the individual and team behaviors that you experienced on a day-to-day basis. I still remember it. It's actually my first ever full-time work experience, and I have a better understanding of the organizational culture in mining and the team cultures that exist than I do about every other company that I've worked for since. Don't tell all of my bosses and current boss since that. However, culture means something very different. It means when you walk onto a coal mine and you swipe your card and you walk through the gate, you are immediately focused and scanning the environment for anything that can hurt you. It means that you are relying and building team trust and camaraderie so that if you are underground working on a long wall for 12 and a half hours with a team of people that you know probably as well as you do your family, that they are always looking out for your back and you have the trust that they will do that as well. It's also about leaders. It's about understanding that the shadow you cast in an environment where there are things every day that can kill you is a deep, deep shadow that influences behaviors and impacts at a very, very individual level. So you can imagine what happened when I left 6 years of coal mining, packed a bag, came to London, said I'm going to join a tech startup culture, and I was told about how absolutely awesome this company is because of table tennis tables, beer fridges, and weird little policies that really don't make any sense. I call bullshit. And this today is really around, now that I have spent the last 3 startups in a row building out what people and culture does actually look like as a part of the business. 3 things that, if I had my time again, I would love to go back and either trust my gut feel from mining, do something a bit differently, or maybe just not do it at all. Now, the list of things that I have screwed up in this journey is long, very, very long. I like to think of it, and you can tell I've probably had therapy for this, but I like to think of it as things I've learned the right way. I've learned it by doing it. But I'm only going to share 3 of them, mostly because we're now in a very different environment to, I think, a lot of the people who've shared stories so far, which is the early stage, scrappy startup environment. But I think these 3 things can probably translate pretty well across different company boundaries. Don't wait to invest in leadership capability. This seems so simple, but let me frame it a different way. There is a rough patch that happens when teams go through growth, which usually comes down to one of 3 things to do with leadership. There are either a lack of people leaders, ineffective people leaders, or what I call accidental leaders. I'm going to go through each of them. A lack of people leaders. It is really, really common that people want to do more than they probably can do and are willing to put their well-being aside to keep managing bigger and bigger teams. It doesn't really work. And the point that you realize it doesn't work, you're already late in being able to do something about that. Now, I think of quite a few of the teams that I've worked to support in the past, and one of the biggest things I wish I could do was go back and look forward a little bit further to understand what kind of leadership capability we need in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, and start to work towards that now. I'm not standing up here telling you to go into a business and add hierarchy. That's not what I mean by leadership capability. We've heard some of the traits that come with great leadership capability already. The idea that you can be someone's support, you can unblock things for them, you can be their coach, you can actively listen to what they're saying and make changes. These are the things I mean around adding that leadership capability in at the right times to avoid spans of influence getting way too big. Then you have ineffective leaders, the thing we don't really like to talk about too much. I used that idea of the shadow before. The shadow of a leader casts very, very deep into the organization to influence behaviors. If they are an ineffective leader, that shadow stinks. It has an amplifying effect on everyone around it, the team cultures, the individual experience that it touches. I'm sorry, but it stinks. Now, our first principle is always, how can we help that person become a better leader, the best version possible of themselves? And it doesn't mean going out and building 12 and 18-month-long leadership academies. We're talking early stage startup here. It's been about 5.5 years since I last had a budget. So when we talk about leadership development, we're talking about one-to-one, very candid coaching conversations, starting on a small skills basis, giving managers the chance to be able to experiment with their own style, to make mistakes, to reflect on it in a safe space, and maybe go back and do something differently again. It also means things like peer feedback. Ironic, given we're all wearing the little high bob lanyards, but we've been using this now in multiple companies for well over 4 years, around every single manager being accountable for the peer and team feedback they receive every year around how they're performing in their role. It is confronting, it is hard, but the people who are willing to make changes and grow through that come out with some really, really exceptional behaviors afterwards. The final thing is when none of that works. And let's be honest, it happens. And I'm just going to come out and say it. If you have leaders in the organization that are not demonstrating the right behaviors, whether it's inclusive or even technical leadership, they're not responding to leadership development, they're not responding to coaching and support, they're not engaging in the feedback process, they need to go. It's one of the strongest symbols that you can make, especially in a company that's growing fast, is to take action on a senior leader who is not up to scratch. The final one is accidental leaders. What on earth does that mean, Pat? Accidental leaders, we've all seen it. It's when a really strong individual contributor has too much work on their plate, so they need to hire someone. And they have their first team member. Guess what? Work doesn't stop. Work keeps growing. So they hire another person. Then they hire another person. At some point, you cross a threshold for which that person is spending a disproportionate amount of their time being a people leader and not actually doing what potentially they really enjoyed doing in the first place. If the answer to your question, what gets you out of bed excited on the Monday morning, is not being a people leader, and you are in that position, I cannot think of a more unforgiving and ruthless role to possibly do in any company, let alone an early stage startup where you probably don't have a great deal of structure or support around you. Second one, ground your decision making. I love the fact I've come straight after Gallup with this one, because I'm about to talk about how as much as we trust our ability to be able to use good judgment, the ability to be able to supplement and anchor that within really good quality data is paramount. And I'm going to use an example. Actually, I'm curious, has anyone built a reward or compensation framework from scratch? Sucks, right? It is truly one of those things that is so fun and amazing to do, yet I kind of don't want to ever have to do it again. But I'll use a real example here. We built a compensation framework, and we were very deliberate this time around wanting to invest early in something that could scale with the business. We did pretty comprehensive market benchmarking, and then we shared all of that data with the team. We then went and analysed our gender pay gap and our equal pay gap, and we shared all of that data with the team. We are well under 250 people. We don't need to do that. And if you think the data, I must admit, if you think the data is bad for companies reporting above 250, wait till you see the ones below it. Even worse. We built out very transparent processes around exactly how you could go about getting pay increases and at what point you could get pay increases. We forecasted everything. We modeled a whole bunch of different scenarios, and we put the entire thing out to the team and then built our compensation framework around that. Now, this is where I tell you that everybody absolutely loved it. Nope, didn't happen. It didn't please everyone. And I was that person very early in my career that used to love pleasing people until I realized it just doesn't happen when you're dealing with people and culture. But that doesn't stop the obligation to do the right thing. And sometimes, especially with compensation frameworks, if you are removing historical advantages that have created unfair playgrounds for people, if you are making decisions that might be very fair and consistent decisions, but conflict with someone's sense of self-worth, it's really uncomfortable. It doesn't stop necessarily our ability to be able to do the right thing. It's being able to lean on the fact that it's not just your good judgment in that situation. It wasn't just me making the call. There was something deeper than that. It was grounded within data and facts. And the final one, culture is the product your people buy. This is wild on LinkedIn at the moment. I probably could have picked a better time to raise this, but I'm not claiming it. There's a stack load of literature out there. You might have heard things like what would happen if we started to treat our employees like we do our customers, or if we started to do co-creation, or we started to do consider the purchasing decision that an employee makes in your recruitment process, where they decide to buy you as a company. They buy what you're selling. And they join it, and at some point they may decide that a better company, a better product is actually what they're looking for. I promised 13 and a half minutes, so I'll cut this to a baby little wee story here. I've built parental leave 3 times for one company and screwed it up twice. First time, I did it based on what statutory requirements were telling me to do until people told me that that is a load of pooch. I then did it a second time and just decided to increase it more. I benchmarked it against a few other companies until a parent pulled me aside after we released it, and everyone was, I'm not a parent, as you will quickly learn, and give me some really candid feedback around what it is like becoming a parent and managing a job and managing a family. So we did it differently. We thought, how would we do this with our customers? Our customers were all big businesses. We said, well, we would get them involved. So we got a group of parents together and said, forget everything you know about parental leave. Don't look at the legislation. Don't look at other companies. Don't look at anything we've done in the past. Blank sheet. Design parental leave for what you either need, or hope to have had, or need in the future that's going to be truly meaningful for you. It was a lot better than mine. I'm just going to put that out there. Parents with no HR background, people and culture background designed a policy that still exists in place. It is half a page. It is 26 weeks at full pay. There is no tenure requirement. There is no clawback period that exists. It is gender blind. It is blind to location. It is blind to family circumstance. It still to date exists. People join the company because of it. They leave the company because of it. And I get to stand on stage and talk about something that I basically did nothing, and it's probably one of the coolest things that I've ever had the chance to be involved in. Thank you, parents. Wasn't the end, but it's a great place to end it. The final bit with all of this is that, yeah, a bit awkward. Final bit with all of this is that I'm a real wholehearted believer in learning things the right way. So if there's a message out of any of this, it's that some of the companies I've been involved with and screwed up a whole lot of different things before are still on pretty good stead. People respect the ability that you're able to experiment, you're able to find things that work for people at an individual level. And from listening to everyone else's talk, I think we're all on the same page with that anyway. Now you can clap.